Hey everybody, welcome to Real Birding Media. I'm Will, this is Caleb, and boy do we have a good show for you this week. It's been a funny week in the world of birding. We've got red snowy owls, which seems like an oxymoron. We've got gray owls invading from the north. Lots to talk about. Let's get into it.
Will, haven't seen you in a hot minute. How you doing?
Yeah, man. I'm doing all right. The sun's back out here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh
We've
boy,
got the orchids are in bloom. Not much else is in bloom, but yeah, it's like 65 degrees, so I'm feeling groovy.
I tell you what, the seasonal affective disorder is real this winter, and anybody who lives up here will be able to testify to that. But it's finally breaking. Tomorrow we're supposed to get south winds and 50-degree temperatures, and nothing has arrived yet. So everything is going to be here tomorrow, like blackbirds, killdeer, you know what I mean? Geese
Yeah.
probably. So
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
you guys have had the extreme winter without the extreme winter birds, which is kind of a bummer.
Oh yeah, it's been the harshest winter in many, many years. And we normally get North Carolina weather up here these days, but not this year. We got snow, we got ice, and it was stayed below freezing a lot. So definitely ready to get moving.
Yeah. Well, one group of birds that you have been getting in lower Michigan is snowy owls. And along with several snowy owls being seen in Michigan's lower peninsula, there's one unique bird that has been ruffling some feathers. Birders flock, and all the things that reporters like to say when rare birds show up and they're reporting on them. I kid.
Well said. This crazy bird showed up, I'm going to say 6 to 8 weeks ago up in the tip of the thumb. And as soon as these pictures popped up, people are like, what is going on here? Is this some kind of genetic polymorphism thing? Or is it like AI? And I'm like, people, that's a legit question to ask these days. It does kind of look like an AI bird. It isn't. But look at this beast. Have you ever seen anything like this?
No, I have not. Although I have heard somebody was saying some of the people from Project Snowstorm found a snowy owl that was stained dark gray, and they were saying that
Wow.
their hypothesis, and this is like 20 years ago, but their hypothesis for why was that it was roosting under a culvert or a bridge or something that was getting, and they were spraying like primer on it, and the bird, not realizing what was going on, got sprayed itself. That's my theory for what's going on here, and I think most people probably agree, but it's a lively discussion. We'll just say that.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Birds that roost in like cavities or tunnels in the sandbank wall, like northern rough-winged swallow and bank swallow and kingfishers. Occasionally, those birds will go into pipes, exhaust pipes that have active soot and oil deposits and so on. And so we have seen what we thought was like a dark morph northern rough-winged swallow over the years. And so staining and dyeing is a common thing. The birds get into the wrong situations. And my hypothesis when I look at this is what I thought from the very get-go. And actually, the bird was photographed inside a barn. It took it a minute for that information to come out, but this bird had been going in and out of somebody's barn and was photographed inside of it. And to me, when you look at the position of the pigment here, see how it's on the outer webs of these feathers, but not the inners, and it's on the wing coverts and the head and the scapulars and mantle feathers. Whatever it is only on the exposed surface of the bird when it's perched. So that suggests that something was spilled, onto it. And the fact that it was in the barn, I even saw one person commenting in one of the threads that said it might be de-icing retardant or whatever I don't know what it's called, but that stuff is red colored. And these birds are often standing out in airport on the tarmac and could have been under the plane or somehow it got accidentally sprayed or spilled onto it. And that's exactly what I think is going on here.
Another theory that was thrown out was the red fire. The planes that dump the red liquid over fires.
Yeah, fire retardant. Yeah.
Yeah. So if this bird was hanging out over the summer, whenever the fires were in Quebec, and it just happened, it does seem odd though. It would be hanging out in the middle of a wildfire. I don't know. I think most likely.
It's
Go
funny you
ahead.
say that. Do you remember that there was one in Los Angeles like a winter or two ago, like in downtown LA, and that's where all this
Hmm.
fire retardant is being sprayed? That's outlandish to offer that hypothesis, but yeah. Anyway, I'm sure it's not that, but um, check out the headline though here. This is really interesting. This is coming out way after the fact, like a month or 6 weeks into it. There is a researcher at Michigan State who says this is likely a genetic mutation. And so I read the article and I thought, um, it is Kevin McGraw of the Integrative Biology Department at MSU says it's likely an expression of genes that are normally downregulated that were environmentally triggered, maybe by toxins or something like that. The issue that I'm having with this is that why is in subsequent photos of this bird, the red is getting less and less obvious. It's like wearing off. And the fact that it's in the feather areas that are exposed when it's perched, to me, is just strongly goes against this. I don't
So,
think this is right. And I'm not a geneticist. This guy knows, I'm sure he knows all kinds of stuff I don't know, but I don't think that's right.
yeah, another thing that caught my eye about what Kevin McGraw was saying about this bird is he was pointing out the sort of orangey, rusty colorations which have been seen in owls that are in the same genus as snowy owl. So, okay, so maybe 10,000 years ago, 1 in 5 of these birds was rusty red. The problem is this isn't rusty red. This is bright red. I don't
Yeah,
think there is a gene. I don't think there's a gene in this bird that could be switched on
yeah,
that could create, like red rover, send Daisy on over colors in
yeah,
this bird. It doesn't make
yeah,
any sense.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely crazy the kinds of mutations that you can see in birds, and sometimes it is totally confounding of what you previously thought you could believe. But to claim that this is from a genetic mutation, I think is probably way off base. I'm surprised it came from a researcher, and I'm not even like a big skeptic of science. I tend to believe these people, but I think that might be a case of when you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and I don't think that that's a case of genetic mutation.
Yeah, I agree with you. Have a look at this yellow-headed blackbird if I can get the. Okay, is it visible? Yeah. So this is a yellow-headed blackbird male that I found in Montana back in 2003. And as you all know, this is a black bird with a yellow head and a little bit of white in the wing. But this individual almost has none of the black. And so if you look carefully at it, the yellow goes well down be underneath where the normal black is. And the point of this is if it was gene expression of underlying pigments that are just not normally visible, so like that yellow is just hidden under the black in a normal bird. But if you get rid of the black, the yellow pops out. Well, how are you going to get red pigment in a white bird popping? So that may not be exactly what Kevin is saying here. It probably isn't, but I think it's another hypothesis that you can just eliminate.
Yeah. Yeah, so moving forward, I don't want to be the guys that put scientists on blast for putting their opinion out. I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes people come to you with questions, and if you're off guard and you haven't done all the research, but you want to do your best to give your thoughts, sometimes you say some stuff and it might not be right, and it's unfortunate that there's already so much discussion about this bird. Because now Dr. McGraw from MSU is really, really getting nitpicked in this discussion.
I think another piece I want to toss on this, I'm part scientist, but I'm more birder. I've been at this for like 40 years now. If you have a lab background and you're indoors and you are not out observing these animals and understanding all these little intricacies of their biology and the fact that a snowy owl would go into a barn, for example, it's I don't know. There's obviously really good value in both approaches, but sometimes you're gonna miss obvious hypotheses if you're stuck in the lab and not outdoors investigating these birds in the field. So obviously there's weaknesses to us is that we don't really know the genetics of the way that they do either. So but it's kind of the field thing versus the lab thing, and I thought it was just a little unfortunate that the headline went out saying, well, this is probably a genetic mutation when had they spoken with some birders ahead of time, or people who knew that it was in the barn and that the pigment was going down and so on, they would have
Well, and
that a bit more.
and took the time to examine that in the flight feathers that are red, when they're perched, the flight feathers are like this. and you can see that this part and this part are all red. And then when those feathers splay out, you can see that the parts that were covered up are
Yep.
pure white.
Yep. What kind of a coincidence of genetics would make that the case? It's implausible.
Again, we're not geneticists, and I wouldn't go so far to say as we could be wrong. But like, yeah,
I mean, it's possible. It's not impossible that we're wrong, but they're ignoring a really obvious hypothesis with it. So anyway, fun saga, amazing bird. I remember when I first saw it, I thought, what is going on here? I've never seen anything like this. Like, it's just completely unprecedented. So that bird will probably only be up in the thumb for another week or month or something before it, things warm up. It's probably going to head back to the Arctic. So I probably won't get over there to see it. It's a long haul.
Yeah.
But speaking of owls, have a look at this beauty. Ready for this?
Mm-hmm. I think I know where we're going with this. Oh, yeah.
All right, so watch this. This is I think in Minnesota of February 18th. And this is great gray owl up in northern Minnesota. Watch where this thing lands. Look at this. Right on the cameraman's lens. Just oblivious to the people around. And
I don't know how this footage is this good. If this was me, the footage would look like this because my hands would be shaking.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, it's one of the most spectacular birds there is. I haven't even seen one in 20 years, and I'm dying to see another one. Just very unlike any other species of bird you're going to see. Like, the face is big as a human face. They're like the facial disc. It's almost more head than it is body. I mean, it's just an absolutely spectacular animal. And he did not bait it. He wanted to be clear here. He didn't want to get accused of having, lured that thing in. It came in and landed because it's just tame and not really paying attention to the people. But can you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of stinks. There's this kind of long tradition and like kind of infamous tradition of photographers using live mice and dead mice to bait in owls to come in so they can get a closer picture. And, at first thought you might think, well, it's not that big of a deal. They're giving it food. But for species that are this sensitive, it's really bad to teach them that it's safe to be around people because there's enough yahoos out there. And these birds are so sensitive to environmental factors and disturbance, and
it brings them close to roads. I mean, road killed great gray owls back in 2006 or 2005. There was a humongous invasion in Minnesota, and lots of them were dead on the road because this is a bird that hunts low over the roads. And if you put the mouse on the road, the bird's going to fly out there, and there's a lot of reasons not to do it. And the birds, sometimes they're starving. Sometimes it probably does help them calorically, but I think on the whole, it's going to be worse for the birds to, accommodate them to make them all used to people.
What would you say is the closest you've ever been to to a wild owl?
Well, I've held a long-eared owl. Does that count? Well, one that was untethered. Boy.
Well, some people have these wild stories of getting dive bombed, and so there's something about owls that it seems like more so than even other raptors. I guess I've seen red-shouldered hawks do this too, where if you get too close to the nest, they'll get really defensive and territorial.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember a saw-whet coming into. I was actually doing an owl study for Michigan Natural Features Inventory probably 20 years ago, and we were luring for owls to collect scientific data to describe their occurrence throughout the state of Michigan. And we had a saw-whet that came right in and landed next to us. And then at the last second, a barred owl that we didn't know was there just swooped in and did not get it, thankfully. But it swooped in, this was all within 20 feet of us or something. So that was pretty shocking. And then I've also found roosting saw-whet owls on a couple occasions and had them, 20, something like 20 feet away. And you got to be careful in these situations because you don't want to stress the bird out and cause it to fly during the daytime. Then it gets, eaten and so on. But I can actually show you. Yeah, check this out. This is one of the saw-whets that I'm talking about here. Isn't that incredible, dude? So I was
Yeah.
walking the trail, and normally it takes kind of like optics or something. You'd kind of glass, all the little grapevine tangles and so on. This one was absolutely naked eye. I was just walking the trail, and I saw an appropriate looking grapevine tangle kind of at eye level. And when I looked, I could see the bird's belly with the brown streaks on it, kind of hanging underneath the tangle. So I went around and I did not flush the bird. I made sure he was in there, and I didn't tell the public either because it's just very, very dicey. People accidentally flush them. Photographers who don't have ethical concern for the bird will even go in and flush them and start removing sticks and go crazy with it. So I always hide these.
Yeah. It's so funny the sort of like feuds birders have with photographers on owl ethics.
Oh yeah, there's been some epic ones over the years.
Hmm.
Totally random tangent. Because I've had long-eareds doing the same thing that were kind of sensitive, and I always hide long-eareds. They're just even the best intention of people, when they try to go in, they don't see them, and so they work their way closer into the known roost, and then it flushes them accidentally, and that can really hurt the birds because once the predator knows where the roost is, they don't want to stay there the next night, and a lot of times they end up leaving. But this is totally random, but this long-eared owl was in Montana in the summertime, and it was in the middle of the day, flying around, landing on the fence posts. Have you ever even heard of that? I was blown away.
No.
Isn't
The
that
closest thing
crazy?
is the closest thing is one night, probably in like 2021 or 2020, I was out at the Allegan State Game Area, looking at the short-eared owls with Rick Brigham, our good friend.
Yeah.
Uh, and there were, I don't know, half a dozen short-eared owls flying around, and it's getting dark and darker and harder to see. And Rick he's looking through his scope, and he's like, I think I've got a long-eared owl out here. And I get on the bird he's looking at, and sure enough, it's this like obvious dark Azio flying with the short-eared owls. And it probably did land on a fence post at some time. So that'd be the closest thing I've ever seen to that. But that is
Amazing.
it's very unusual because not only are they rarer than short-eared owls, but they seem to come out when it's darker, and they don't seem to fly around during the daytime. They're not crepuscular the way that short-eareds are. They're more of like a true nocturnal bird, even
Totally
though they're
agree.
so closely related.
Totally agree. Yep, exactly the case. Long-eared is way more sensitive and unwilling to come out in the light, and they aren't willing to roost out in the open like short-eareds will in the grass. They require a thicket where they can really get in there and hide and be out of sight, pretty much throughout the daytime. I think what was going on here, and this is a little bit more common in Europe from what I've heard too, is that this bird has chicks that need fed, and they're not getting enough food. So the bird is, you know, it's stretching to make sure that the chicks don't starve, and that's probably what was going on there.
Interesting.
One other, since we're on long ears, check this out. Back in 2006, 2005, 2006, at a site which shall remain nameless, I had a roost of wintering long-eared owls, about 8 birds, and I had read the Craighead's book back in the 50s on raptors of Michigan, and it said that at the end of the winter, around March 15th, all but 2 of the birds in the roost will leave and migrate north, but the 2 will remain, and one will be the darker orange-faced female, and the other one will be a paler orange-faced male, a little smaller, and they'll try to nest. And at this site, there were crow platforms. So I kept going back after the winter had ended, and look what happened. This is the only time, this is one of 2 times I've seen this in Michigan. It's really hard to see it, but this is the crow platform here. And you can see the ears sticking up, and that is the incubating female. I was able to go in there at night, and the male was flying around above the nest doing that single wing clap. You know how short-eared does they do a bunch of wing claps in a row. Long-eared does just one, and he's circling like this, and he saw us, and he just buzzed our head and nearly hit us because we were probably, I don't know, 150 feet away and like kind of back from the nest. But we watched the chicks come out, and they were branching out, and walking out like this and fuzzy down. Oh, it was just incredible, dude.
Amazing.
So cool.
Real quick, while we're talking about long-eared owls, I'll share my long-eared owl story. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So here's a long-eared owl that I found last spring. I I had just been out birding all day with our friend Talus, and I got home. I was visiting my parents, and I got home, and my dad and my grandma and my grandpa and my dog were there, and they were having a glass of wine on the back patio. And I still had my binoculars, and I hear the blue jays and crows in the back going crazy, absolutely crazy. And I'm like, well, I bet there's a great horned owl back there, or a barred owl or something. So I grabbed my dog and I grabbed my binoculars and I started walking back there, and I got to this clump of sort of viney tangle where I thought the owl was probably hanging out, and I gave a little barred owl call, like a, you know, and all of a sudden this little owl jumps out of the thicket and flies back into a tree, and I put my binoculars up to it, and immediately I think I probably literally gasped because there was a long-eared owl in my backyard in this little suburban woodlot in like late April. And I don't know about you, it's a bird that I just never thought I would sooner think I would find a Western tanager in my suburban backyard in Kalamazoo, Michigan, than find a long-eared owl. Just
100%.
totally insane. So I literally got to get my scope. I put it right on the bird. Unfortunately, it was disturbed because I had no idea that it was a long-eared owl when I was walking up to it. So it looks like it's really anxious, but I did go get my scope. I was probably 50 yards away from it at the time. I got my grandpa to see it, my grandma to see it, my dad to see it. Unfortunately, my mom was out of town, and she's the real birder of the family, although my grandma's also a birder. But that was pretty cool. My grandma had never seen a long-eared owl before, and she's been a birder for, 3 decades probably. So that was amazing. And then our friend Talus got to see his lifer long-eared owl too. So
dude,
that's my long-eared owl story.
I mean, that's got to be the yard bird of all yard birds, other than like some really rare feeder vagrant type thing if you've had it. But I mean, because I've been in your yard, you do not have long-eared owl habitat there. What you have like a canopy woodlot without much thicket, but it's in suburbia. So like if you're a long-eared owl stuck in this area and the sun comes up, you've got to find the nearest tree and get down and into it and hide for the rest of the day. And this bird did not have enough time to find. It was obviously moving and migrating around, so it had to take the least cruddy habitat and just use that for the day. And then you got really lucky to be there, because I'll tell you, that bird was not back there the next night. There's no way that bird would have came back the next night. It would have tried to find something better. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that will be beat. I do think over the course of a lifetime of yard birding, you might get something better than that, but that is by far the best bird I've had in my yard. Yeah, magic. And to get to share it with my family and Talus, that was pretty amazing.
This is absolute magic, dude. On a different note, check this out. Okay, so this is the app Windy. If birders don't know about this, you definitely want to start using this thing because it is incredible.
Yeah.
So you have to click wind, and then you can scroll through the time of day and up until about like a week from now. So as this is right now, you zoom in, you've got kind of a slow westerly wind. And what we really want to look for in spring is these southerly winds. So watch what happens as I go into tomorrow here. Look at this, it turns to the southwest. And then by midday, look at this. And again, we have not seen. It's been so cold up here. Everything is really backed up. The snow is just finally getting melting now. Blackbirds are not in, and in a warm year, they would have been here 2 weeks ago. So we know these things are knocking on the door, and we will be up here watching stuff come up the lakeshore in Saugatuck Dunes here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to it.
This is one of the things that I really miss now that I'm pretty much landlocked where I'm at. Most people probably don't think of Michigan, although many of our audience probably does know how good Michigan birding is. But if you're from the East Coast or the West Coast and you're used to kind of the ocean corridors being the best place for birding, Michigan is amazing. It's amazing for a Midwestern state to be able to have that much lakeshore to focus birds in one area. And then also the dunes so that you can get a vantage and look kind of down on these birds that are migrating and using the northwest corridor of that lakeshore and the habitat that comes along with it, because a lot of it is still undeveloped. It's amazing.
Yeah, the difference is you can go birding on a day like tomorrow, inland if you want to. And you're going to see stuff. You're going to see some stuff, no doubt about it. It's just that by getting to the lakeshore and getting where you can see everything, all of the birds that would have been out over Lake Michigan are just blasted into the shore's edge, and it kind of creates a parade of birds. Whereas if you move inland more than a mile, it's just background levels of birds. So,
right.
I fully expect we'll get lots of blackbirds. Robins could start moving. Wouldn't be surprised. Crows could start moving. Horned larks and longspurs will move early some years, and obviously waterfowl. Pintails, greater white-fronted geese are knocking on the door in the thousands in northern Indiana right now, and cranes too. Speaking of cranes, have you heard about all this HPAI, avian influenza?
I guess we should talk about this while we have time. Yeah, it's a bit of a downer, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. So just to put the story out there, there's this highly pathogenic avian influenza, HPAI, which has been around it's around every year at some level, and you get different variants of it, kind of like the human flus. And the one that's going around now is really bad. It's really virulent, and it's killing lots of birds. The Indiana DNR says it has over 1,500 dead bird reports of sandhill cranes. These are birds that winter down there in the thousands. So,
and that's going to be a low estimate too.
Oh, that's going to be the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately. What I can attest is that there's still a lot of live birds down there too. It's not like it's killing them all, but it is definitely really kicking stuff back. And apparently it's getting into like cattle and house cats, geese. Waterfowl can be really sensitive to it. And it turns out the cranes actually might have brought it over from Siberia. The sandhill crane, I'll pull up the map here. Sandhill cranes actually nest not only in North America, they actually cross into Russia. There are sandhill cranes that cross the Bering Strait each spring and each fall right here. And the hunters know about this. You can actually watch them flying across this, what is it, like 40 miles or something like that? And there's an island in the middle. And they go as far west as whatever this is.
Yeah, wherever that is. Yeah, do you think we should build a magnificent wall to keep them out?
I'm sure that would work really well. And actually, common crane is the crane that everybody associates with it's kind of like the sandhill crane of Eurasia, and there's not a lot of pins because there's not many birders in Russia, or many e-birders anyway. But these sandhills actually overlap with common crane in Siberia in the summertime, and so that's one of the mechanisms that they think that the common cranes will get in with a flock of sandhills, and then they find themselves migrating across the Bering and all the way down. Yeah. So you pull up common crane in the U.S. and there was one in Indiana recently, and there can be up to 2 or 3 at a time. California, Arizona, Texas, pretty interesting.
Yeah,
the hunters actually documented them, and what was the other one?
Hooded crane.
What was that?
Are you talking about hooded crane?
Yeah, hooded. I was going to say crowned, but that's African.
Yeah.
Yeah, they found
that's even
hooded
rarer.
Crane mixed in. Oh yeah, this is crazy because they don't nest in Siberia. They're more temperate, but there's been a few of them in the States over the years, and they may well be doing the same thing. So pretty cool. So we shall see. I'll have to report back to you next week on what happens.
Well, all right. Did we do it, Caleb? Did we do our episode of Real Birding Media?
Indeed, we did. A nice, perfect 30-minute mark there.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can do this little announcement. We are going to try to release an episode on Friday or Saturday every week now going forward. So keep tuning in. Tell your friends. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube. And at some point, I think we're going to expand to probably Spotify and Apple Music when we can. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Good to talk to you, Will. See you next week.
All right, Caleb. Bye.
Peace.